Hey, it's Pete. I'm back. I thought I'd do what I haven't done in a while, which is just a weekly update. This is some stuff I've finished recently, and some stuff I'm almost done with. I will start out first with The Demon of Motion by Stefan Grabiński. Get back to my page here. I'm not set up. Uh, this guy, a Polish horror writer, very much championed in the West by Thomas Ligotti. I talked about this a little bit in my possibles for March March in Motion, the train event, which I'm very excited about. But this was a new translation that I had not read before. There is a book called The Motion Demon. Uh, this translation is done by Joanna Malta. I'm guessing it's fairly recent. I couldn't even find much information on this edition on in Google. I couldn't find this cover or anything. This is currently in Kindle Unlimited. That's how I borrowed it. Um, this book is horribly formatted. This ebook is horribly formatted. This is a nice cover. It's probably AI or stock footage or something. I imagine it's self-published. I imagine Joanna Malta did it herself, and I want to say two things about it. First of all, positive. This is a fantastic. These are fantastic translations. I've read the standard book of The Motion Demon, which was not my favorite Grabiński book. My favorite one, and this is probably the one you should read if you want to get into this author, is, let me see if I can find that. This is sort of the standard. Is it going to open? This is the standard translation of his short fiction, which is all he ever wrote, I believe. The Dark Domain, which has some of his train stories. It has the Motion Demon story itself in it, and plus a good selection of his other work. So I recommend that as the best introduction to his work. But the Demon of Motion, I should say, it's getting a little confusing because there's all these different versions. But I was really impressed. I was only going to read the first story. And then I ended up reading the whole book. It's only like 130 pages, and these are all stories I'd read before. But I think your translations are really good. The formatting of this book is horrible. These stories are in the public domain because this book was originally published in as the Motion Demon in 1919. He's in Polish. Um, there's 10 stories. There's This Insane Thing. Copyright by Joanna Malta. She's trying to copyright her translations, which is good, but that's not legal. This is not This is not how you do copyright. You have to have a year there. You can't just say copyright in general. You have to has to be 2024. If you do another edition, you could do 2026 or something like that. This is not helping her. Not that it'll probably matter because it's not probably a big thing that's going to go into copyright dispute. But if she ever had one about this, this would not really help her as a copyright because it's incomplete. You have to have the word copyright. You have to have the copyright sign. This just has an @ sign, not the copyright circle thing. Don't ask me how I know all this stuff, but anyway, I do. Then there's the table of contents, which is very inconsistent. You see, sometimes the title is capitalized properly for English. Sometimes it is not. Just the first word is capitalized. And blind track again here, the T should be capitalized. I know this is kind of in the weeds here, but I had very low expectations for this version. Even worse is the table of contents, the way it's set up. Here's how the first story is formatted: name of the author, name of the collection, and then name of the short story. It should just have each story is like that. Name of the author, name of the collection again that we're still reading, and the name of the story, Sloven. What that ends up being formatted is as when you generate a table of contents in an ebook, you get this. which is just infuriating. If you're trying to read the stories here and go back to your favorite story, because it only takes the first part of the header that you put in. So here we have 10 stories, which are all in the table of contents as Stefan Grabiński. Ridiculous. Um, so I don't know. Someone needs to help her with that and fix those little things. It's probably not that big a deal because it's a short story collection and it's not going to be that popular anyway. There's other editions of these, but I really think whoever did all this crappy formatting in the ebook really did a disservice because these are excellent translations. These are better than the standard Motion Demon book I read before. So I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I stuck with it. So if you happen to get that too, just deal with those kind of drawbacks, I guess, or not. Then what else did I read? So I read more Conan. I read more Robert Howard, which was Conan, this time because my Howard book for the month of February, finally, The Coming of Conan. Let's see if I can find it here, because I wanted to point out some of those stories too. And it probably is, well, it has been in the past. It has included all the Conan stories that I really like. Um, let me see. How do I get to what the heck? Oh, I've got all these sorting things on here. Okay, I'll move to this. This is what I read on my Books Palma. Let's see what I got here. Conan the Cimmerian. That's the one I read. Conan the Cimmerian. I wish it would stop jumping off the cover. Not that it matters because it's in black and white anyway, but if you go to the table of credits, it has most of my favorite Conan stories in it. Starts out with the poem Cimmeria, which is just going to be, and then the Phoenix on the Sword, which was a rewrite of a Cole story, which is the first full Conan short story. Starts off interestingly when he's a king already, when you consider the whole oeuvre after that, how it goes all over his career. Starts off the first story he wrote. What I like about these three Howard Del Rey Conan editions is that they are in the order the stories were written, or at least published. I think there's some guesswork on some of the fragments and things like that. But he first wrote the Phoenix on the Sword, based on an old Cull draft he had done. He had to redraft that twice for. He was rejected the first time. Then he was rejected as by the Saxai rule for Weird Tales. Then it was the first draft of the Phoenix on the Sword was also rejected, and then finally, he took in. There were some editorial suggestions from the editor of Weird Tales, which Howard incorporated and finally sold the first Conan story, and the rest is history. And then my two favorite. Then The Frost Giant's Daughter is the second story in here, which was also rejected because it was a bit racy, a bit too erotic, I guess, or sexual for Weird Tales at the time. He published it as a non-Conan story in sort of a semi-pro or a fanzine magazine later. And then they restored the original edition, the original draft for this, and in all current editions. Then The God and the Bull, which was another story that was not published, which has a very Lovecraftian ending, which I really liked. I didn't particularly remember this story before, but Conan spoiler, actually runs away in terror from the God and the Bull at the end. It's very Lovecraftian. This god that he encounters, which is an old one and ancient. Then probably, I guess, one of the contenders, definitely my favorite Conan story, The Tower of the Elephant, I think is is Howard's masterpiece. It comes to Scarlet Citadel, another really good King Conan story. Then The Queen of the Black Coast, which I think is is probably the one contender that people that has as many champions as Tower of the Elephant. I would say most people probably like the Queen of the Black Coast or Tower of the Elephant as the main story, I would think. Lost the. Oh my God, I'm all the way out of it now. Then there is some of the. Where are they? Queen of the Black Coast, Black Colossus. Okay, then we get into a few. Black Colossus isn't bad. Then we get into a couple that I didn't even remember from previous rereadings. I'm sure I read them because I read all those horrible Elsbreg de Camp versions, which did have the original stories in them. One called Iron Shadows in the Moon, Zuthal of the Dusk, The Pool of the Black One, Rogues in the House, again, very good. The Veil of Lost Women, often considered like one of the worst Conan stories, wasn't published in Weird Tales, wasn't published until the 60s. The Devil in Iron is okay. He's kind of going into a slump where they kind of start to be like little formula stories where Conan meets a sexy lady and has to rescue her or something, which is always part of the good stories too, but these seem a bit formula. And I've already started on March's book, which because I wanted to do one a month, but I'm trying to squeeze another one in there now, which is what do they call the derivation? Oh, the bloody crown of Conan, and it only contains 3 stories. The bulk of the volume is The Hour of the Dragon, the only Conan novel. What was the first story called? People of the Black Circle. I read that. Excellent. I'm in the middle of Hour of the Dragon and the last story in this collection. And they have lots of appendices and stuff, fragments and things like that. But the last full story is A Witch Shall Be Born, which I don't remember, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm really enjoying The Hour of the Dragon right now. I've only read the first 4 chapters, I think, but I never really cared for it in the past. I really liked when I read Conan before. I really liked reading about young Conan, especially Conan the Thief, more than Conan the Chieftain or Conan the King. But this read, I'm going through it kind of slow. I'm just reading a couple chapters a day. I really am enjoying The Hour of the Dragon. So my Conan and Howard reading has been, I would say, a great success. The book I'm trying to fit in before May. In May, I'm going to read the collected Howard horror stories. So before then, I'm trying to fit in the Breckenridge Elkin stories because I saw Michael K. Vaughan's video on those recently, and they sound comparable. They allegedly have a lot of humor, reportedly have a lot of humor, and I really enjoyed those Sailor Steve Costigan stories, the boxing stories. I know I recommended them to some people who were just kind of iffy on them, but I love those. So I'm hoping I can get some of the same kind of feel about the Breckenridge Elkin stories. And again, I didn't buy the official one or anything. I bought the cheapo public domain one for 99 cents. So I'm trying to get a little ahead of my Conan volumes so I can fit those in before May. And what else have I been reading? There's a few other things, and it's all I have complaints about all of it, and I have some praise about all of it too. So let's see what's next. Okay. Marble Hall Murders. This is the 3rd Susan Ryland mystery by Anthony Horowitz. I can't say that I really enjoyed it. I barely finished it. I kind of skimmed the last few chapters because I just didn't care. I liked the first one. I can't remember. Moonflower Murders. There's been 3. The first one is by far the best. These depend on a gimmick, and there's a BBC series of them too for people who'd rather watch a series than read a fairly long mystery book of 450 pages. But Magpie Murders was the first one. The Susan Ryland is a book editor, and the conceit is there's a murder mystery involved in the death of her star writer, in the first book who's kind of has a character that's kind of like sort of a modern take on Hercule Poirot, kind of a Poirot ripoff, wildly popular in the first book. And how these books work is there's encoding, so it's a book within a book. So there's a novel she's asked to edit called Marble Hall Murders, um, which has codes to a secret murder, but the stakes have been like dropping off for each book. The first one was really good. It really was probably should have been a one-off, but they wanted to make TV series of them, so they pressured him into writing more books. And supposedly there's one more coming, but she's becoming the detective is becoming very annoying in this book because she is digging up stuff that doesn't really matter anymore and just making people's lives miserable, I guess. So, oh, here's a picture of the river where I walk every day. So I did not enjoy that very much. I probably, who knows? By the time the next one comes out, maybe I'll feel differently. I don't want to read it again. But what else have I got here? Okay, here's a depressing book. Operation Gladio by Paul L. Williams. The unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, and the Mafia. Operation Gladio was an operation run by the CIA, by the OSS, and then was it OSS, and then the C, and then the whatever the precursor to the CIA was, the Central Intelligence. I forget what they called it for the CIA. After they called it, after it was the OSS, and it eventually during World War II, eventually became the CIA. There was an interim period, was called something else. Anyway, they had these folks, these enforcers in Italy at the end of, in Europe and in Italy at the end of World War II, who were called, they originally called the wolves. They called them the wolves or the werewolves or something like that. Then they switched it to gladiators. They called them the gladiators, and Operation Gladio is named after the Gladio was the small knife or pig stick or whatever you call it that gladiators would carry to finish off their defeated foes. So that gives you kind of an idea about what they were doing. Book covers a lot of ground. I'm not sure how speculative it is. It may be a little more speculative than I thought. Than say a book like The Devil's Chessbird or something like one of the standard histories of the CIA. But there's a lot of stuff in here that's corroborated too. Starts out World War II. There was a ship called the Normandy, a French ship called the SS Normandy, that was converted into, I believe it was either a munitions transport or a troop transport, loaned to the Americans and called the USS Lafayette, that burned up in 1942 in New York Harbor. And it was a huge, huge event at the time. The official story today, and I won't bring up Building 7 because that would be ridiculous. The official story today is that the fire was caused by welding sparks. At the time, it was speculated, there's a lot of rumors that it was Nazi saboteurs. This book alleges that Lucky Luciano had the mob destroyed. The mob burnt it. Whether the mob burned it down and blamed it on Nazi spies, which there's no evidence for. Not that Nazis wouldn't have wanted to burn up a ship like that, but there's no evidence that they never uncovered any Nazi plot or anything related to this. But this book alleges that Luciano did this to influence the government to give the mafia control over the ports. Whether that's true or not, what happened after it was burned out, and this is historical fact, is that the United States government did solicit Lucky Luciano, who they had in prison at the time, to influence the mob to run the ports for the United States, so they could, keep the unions in check and everything. They were, even early in World War II, they were worried about strikes and stuff like that in the United States, that were going to undermine the war effort. So it's kind of how this book starts out. It goes through a lot of stuff. What I read it mostly for was, and you see the early evolution of the CIA, which really was the ultimate devil's bargain when they granted, with the powers they granted the CIA at the end of World War II, where things we're still suffering from today under either type of administration. The CIA operates completely off the books. Their budget is secret. Their missions are secret. Everything's secret, which is why you see through history many times, since World War II, there have been many scandals involving the CIA. Sometimes they're just rumored. It's very hard to get information because they don't have any accountability. There's been exposures like I'm going to start reading some books on the Church Committee, which was the last time, and this was in the late 70s. It was really the last time there was any attempt by the United States Congress to really rein in the CIA and really expose some of the stuff that sounds like, nutty James Bond stuff, all the stuff, all the evidence for, things like the plans to blow up Fidel's cigars, or to make his beard fall out so he would lose his revolutionary credibility, all that stuff. A lot of that stuff, all that stuff we know of now, comes out of the Church Committee hearings. And at that time, the head of the CIA ended up destroying millions and millions of documents. Anyway, there's a period in Italy that I'm really interested in now, called the Years of Lead. It's from the mid 60s to the mid 70s, I think, which was they're called the Years of Lead because so many bullets were being fired. What was happening? There was wars between the Mafia, between the old guard fascists and the communists. This book didn't go into it as much as I wanted. I need a more specific book. But what happened, and I think this is what's happening a lot. I think this is the kind of thing that happens a lot in the world. People just don't notice it because it's kind of a structured chaos, or whatever you would call it, where the CIA, the United States, did not want communists to take power in Italy, but there was a strong communist sentiment in Italy. There had been before the fascists, and then after the fascists were defeated in World War II, there was still a lot of pro-communist support. The idea of NATO was very unpopular in Italy. The idea of joining a common market, that kind of thing, was very unpopular with the Italian people at the time. So there were all these terrorism attacks back and forth, and many false flag operations, meaning, somebody would blow up something and they would blame the the communists would blow up something and blame the fascists. Then the fascists would blow up something and blame the communists, which makes sense, really, more than committing terror acts in your own name. It makes more sense to frame someone else, to gain sympathy for your cause. Anyway, there was a ton of chaos, and the general outcome of it was that people were just so sick of the chaos that they moved to the middle, and they're like, fine, let's have a moderate government. Let's have all these extremists. I want all this to stop. And it seems sometimes like things are going on in other countries like that, and you don't know how much of it is manipulated by other forces for their own ends. Just create a bunch of chaos in the world, a bunch of fear, a bunch of violence, a bunch of masked men running around the streets, So that normal people who just have their regular lives to lead are just like, stop, just normal, just give us normal, just give us moderate normal. Whoever can do things peacefully and regularly, let's go with that. I don't know, something to think about. And to get away from all that depressing stuff, I've been reading. Well, I don't want to show that cover first. I've talked about this a couple of times, I think. I love these books. I read them when I was young, and I watched the old BBC series or chunks of it. I hear there's a new series now, which I might even watch because I actually hear it's pretty good, meaning in the last 10 years or so, as opposed to the 70s version. But these books are great. They're about a guy. He used a pen name. These are more or less memoirs. They're slightly fictionalized. They're embellished, like all memoirs are. I think we have to understand that now, that just because something's on the nonfiction shelf does not mean it's nonfiction. Because people like to tell a good story, even if you have to fudge a few things. But for something like this, it's fine. He's a young guy right before World War II. This is what he looks like, at the time he's writing the books or whatever. Who graduates from veterinary school. It's a very tough time to get a job. He lucks into a job in the farms in Yorkshire, and it's about the animals and the farmers, the eccentric farmers, the cases, and his kind of sort of semi-loony brothers who actually own the practice. He comes in just as a hired hand, but later becomes a partner in the practice. And they're really delightful books, and they're very interesting to read about farm life and these kind of things. They're not like, they look sort of almost like quasi-religious and super inspiring. They're more funny than they are. They are charming and funny. They're for people who like, they're similar in if you've read everything by P.G. Wodehouse, and you've read E.F. Benson's Map and Lucia books, and you still want some delightful stuff about rural English life as it was, I highly recommend these. And my last complaint for this video will be the horrible, horrible covers they put on these goddamn books today. Excuse me for that. This is the current, at least the ebook edition of All Creatures Great and Small. There's an ant. Look at this. Is this dog supposed to be sick and depressed and dying? Is that the point of the book? There's like, well, maybe the vet's going to come along and make the dog happy. I mean, what the hell is going on? This is the second book. There's an angry, bitchy cat on this. There's hardly any cats in the book. There are some dogs, and there are farm animals. And here is this possessed cow in the third book. They do a lot with cows. They're really most of the job of the vet has to do with cows that are having trouble birthing calves, or they have some kind of ailment or something. It's really about relieving pain from these beautiful, hardworking animals, and the small farmers who care for them and live by them. And this is just like, I don't know, this looks Lovecraftian to me. Is this cow possessed or something? I don't know what's going on with these stupid ass covers. So I hate them, which is why I'm showing this cover, which is not what you get today, unfortunately, unless you buy a used copy. But it's that sad. I don't know what they're doing with covers these days. So what can I end on that's more positive than that? The books themselves are wonderful. I believe there's 6 volumes, originally published as 8 books in Britain. When they brought them over to the United States, they combined some of the books because they thought they were too short to become big selling novels in the 70s in the United States. But these are the standard editions now that they're done like that, which is a little weird when you read them, because you'll be halfway through the book and then James Herriot will start reintroducing characters like he'll say, like, Siegfried, the owner of the veterinarian, where like, well, I know who Siegfried was because I've just read 250 pages about him. But they could have edited those a little bit more, but whatever. Anyway, now we live in a time where people's attention spans are so short that maybe they do need a reminder. So what else? Is there anything else I could talk about? I am really looking forward to March on the Rails, the train books. I'm going to reread Ripley's Game. I decided, and then I'll dive into the actual train books next month. That's what I'm doing. I hope you're all well. Talk to you later.